Well, it is my pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker, Kevin Tallman. Kevin is the CEO of Mango Voice, and he is a Snow College alum. So we're so happy to welcome him back to Snow College campus today. Kevin is a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader with a proven track record of building and scaling successful companies. His expertise spans various industries from oil and gas to technology and service-based businesses, where he has consistently demonstrated a keen understanding of market dynamics and a talent for identifying opportunities. Kevin is known for his strategic vision, his ability to foster collaborative teams, and his commitment to driving innovation. He's passionate about scaling organizations, financial dynamics, and building culture. He lives in St. George and enjoys spending time with his wife, Courtney, and their 4 children. And we are so grateful that he would make the drive up here today from St. George. So please welcome and give your attention to Kevin Tallman.
Just click the over button. Yeah, like you said, I went to Snow College. God, it's been over 20 years since I've been back. So a lot of things have changed. The campus looks a lot different. I think I was telling Russ when we came, like we never left that main area. I don't know what you call it, but I see a lot more buildings. So it's good to be back in Ephraim. Like you said, I graduated from here. It would have been something like 2004. So the older I get, the realize I'm becoming an old man, and trying to tell my kids about things that happened in 2004, they just look at me like, you're ancient, man. Like, I can't even comprehend what you're saying. But I think what's interesting is when I came to Snow, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was a terrible student. I was telling Russ I had a hard time making it to class. And I think part of it is I had no idea what I wanted to do. I came down here, I played football. That's what I was interested in. And class seemed like a huge distraction to me. And I think part of that, like I said, is not knowing what I wanted to do. And for me, the last thing I wanted to be was an entrepreneur. It never even crossed my mind. And it all came to pass. So I graduated from Snow. I went to Southern Utah. And then I didn't finish my 4-year degree. And in my mid-20s, I just kind of bummed around. I did a lot of sales because sales comes naturally to me. So I did a lot of sales. And then in my late 20s, I got married. And my wife sat me down one day and she said, "Hey, Kevin, I don't care what you do, but let's get your crap together. And let's figure out what we're going to do here." And I thought, well, maybe you're right. So she was studying accounting, so I asked her, I said, "Well, how do you like accounting?" She's like, "I like accounting." My wife's, she's loves math. She's kind of a nerd. She's Southern too, and Southern people are kind of crazy too. I don't know if anybody's from this, probably not from the South here. And I said, well, I'll do accounting. So I went back when I was 28 to finish my degree. So I was an old guy going back to school. Long story short, I met another guy who was my age who had gone back to school to finish his degree. He had just started an oil field services company. He was a finance major. I was accounting. He said, "Hey, I do my own bookkeeping. Will you look at my books?" I said, "Sure." And that started a partnership. We became partners. And I remember he came to me one day and he said, "Hey, I want to be partners with you. I want to give you equity." And I thought, what the heck's equity? What does that even mean? He says, "Well, I want you to be an owner in this business with me." And I said, "Okay." I went home, talked to my wife, and she said, "Let's go for it." So we did it, which turned out to be a very pivotal moment in my life. So that business, we scaled that from 0 in revenue to over 100 million in revenue in about 8 years. And it was like, I don't even know how to explain it. First, it was hell. Like, scaling something is so incredibly difficult. And you don't know what you don't know. But I learned so many lessons. And I think it really helped me kind of understand my strengths and what I want to do. We sold that business to a Fortune 100. And, after you sell a business, you usually take like 6 to 12 months just to feel human again. Because building these businesses, it destroys you physically and mentally. It's just tough. And so I told my wife after we sold that business, I said, listen, if I ever come to you and tell you I want to do another business, I want you to throat punch me. Just like whatever you have to do, talk me out of it. She's like, okay. So 6 months later, I came home one day and I said, hey, Court, we're going to buy this business. And I remember she looked at me, and pardon my language, but she's like, you are such a dumbass. Do you remember what just happened to you? And I said, I know, but I think we can really scale this business. The name of that business is Mango. I'm the CEO of that business now. At that time, they had about 300 customers. And what you'll find with early stage startups is a lot of entrepreneurs they don't know what they're doing, and they get really lost. And when entrepreneurs get really lost, they make really bad decisions. They just do stupid things. And there was 2 partners, and they were kind of in this. And I thought, you know what? I think this is a business that we could really scale. So 2017, we bought half that business, came on board, and fast forward to today, we have about 11,000 customers. We're scaling really nicely. We had about 350 customers every month to the platform. I will say technology is much easier to scale than a lot of other businesses. So it's been a good journey. So I always think of myself as the unlikely entrepreneur. I didn't want to do it, but here I am, and it's been really cool for me. And being a CEO has been a really cool experience for me to help me kind of come into my own and figure out who I am. So I think when a lot of people think of being an entrepreneur or having a business, this is what they think it's like, right? It's like, I'm my own boss. I can do whatever I want. It's so much fun. It's so cool. You can walk around. You can tell people like, hey, I own a business, right? And you think it's really cool. And there are some cool things about it. But I'm here to tell you this is what owning a business is like. You take right hands to the face every day. I always tell people, like, being an entrepreneur is like you walk out in the street, you get hit by a bus every day, and you pop up and you're like, that was awesome. I should do that again tomorrow. And that's basically what it's like. Although you're your own boss, the business really owns you. And if you want to really scale and grow something, that's really what it was like. Early on when we made the investment in Mango, I remember one day I called my partner. He was still running our other business, and I just said, hey, start mentally preparing yourself that this thing is going to zero, because it is a dumpster fire. Like, this is way worse than we thought. We probably should have done some more due diligence. We didn't, but, we just wrote a couple $1 million check, and let's just light that on fire and call it a day. And he's like, that's whatever. So luckily we pulled it out. So I wanted to share a few lessons that I've learned, and then I'd love to just ask questions. I don't like going places where people just talk, so I'd love to answer any questions you have. I'm an open book. I'll tell you whatever. But I wanted to share 3 lessons that I've learned, and I think these lessons are super important. And obviously they're important because I think they're important, right? So this is a hard one for people, is money has no value. If you want to be an entrepreneur to make money, don't be an entrepreneur, because you will be probably more poor than you've ever been. And when you make money, you're going to feel more empty probably than you've ever felt. What I mean by this is we sold our first company, and I had more money in my bank account than I ever thought would be humanly possible. And it was the most miserable year of my life. My health was failing. I was never around for my family. It was pure misery. Then I realized money has no value. Money does not make you happy. once your needs are taken care of, each incremental dollar really like has a huge like diminishing return to it, right? And I'd say the other thing is if you're going to be an entrepreneur, live a very conservative lifestyle. And always remember that the business is not your ATM. I see this all the time where they treat their business like an ATM and they just want to go grab it and grab money. The business exists to do one thing, and that's to create profits, right? And what you do with those profits will determine what kind of entrepreneur you're going to be. Most people start making a little money, and what do? What do you think they do?
Shopping spree.
Shopping spree, what do you mean?
They just go spend it.
They go buy a new car, right? Because that's cool. What else do they do?
Let's just raise their standard of living.
Raise their standard of living. They go buy a big house. They take these cool trips. And those things are like, I'm not saying those things are bad. My thing is, as soon as I made money, I'm a huge Jordan fan. So my Jordan collection got really good, which was pretty awesome. My wife hated it. But be very conservative in your lifestyle. And just remember that just because you're making money doesn't mean you should change your lifestyle. Because at some point you're going to run into a problem in your business. And the more capital you have built up, the better off you're going to be. We all hear this, right? Cash is king. Why is cash king? What do you think? Any ideas? Why do we always hear this? Cash is king. The reality is if you have cash, you get really good deals. Because a lot of people do stupid stuff and find themselves in a bad place. And if you have cash, you're in the negotiating seat. So you can structure really, really good deals if you have cash. So just remember that the more cash you have, the better deals you're going to get, right? All right, number 2 is your mind has to be stronger than your emotions. This is the hardest one for most people. I would say a vast majority of people, this is a huge pitfall for them, is they're so emotional. Do you think the business has emotions? Do you think this business you're building, do you think it cares about you? It doesn't care anything about you. It doesn't care what your kids have going on. It doesn't care if you're tired. It does not care. And the less emotional you can be, the better decisions you're going to make. And if you think in your life, at least in my life, the stupidest decisions I made is when I was emotional. Because I wasn't thinking logically. And if you can strip out the emotion from your decision making, you tend to make much better decisions. So let me give you an example. I just had this recently. Is I hired a new VP of sales and he came in, things were good and then things weren't good, right? This guy lives in Salt Lake. He's down in the office on Monday. He comes in, he's like, hey man, I put a down payment on a house today. I'm so excited to move to St. George. And I knew in my mind, I'm like, well, you're going to be done at Mango. This guy just put a down payment on his house. He's pumped, he's excited. I had to call him into my office and say, guess what? Today's your last day. And the reason most people really struggle with this, but if you think about what's the best decision for the business, and you think in this context, you take away all the emotion, right? If you sit there and say, what is the right thing for the business at this time? You strip out all the emotion and you tend to make much better logical choices. So this one's huge. And I see this all the time with entrepreneurs. They're so flippin' emotional. It's wild to me. Numbers aren't emotional. That's one of the reasons I like accounting is numbers, they don't scream at you. They just tell you, like, are you winning or are you losing? There's no emotion to it. It's very logical. This one's a little bit easier for me because that's just how I'm wired. I think for a lot of people, they're very emotional. And you got to be really careful of this. So be mindful of that one. And then the last one is never compromise your integrity. The thing I see a lot is when people do become successful, and successful means different things to different people, they tend to think that they're better than other people and they take advantage of other people. Money makes people do really weird things. And if you're not careful, you'll lose your integrity. And the reality is we spend our lives building up who we are. And when you build a business, the thing you're trying to do is build a brand, right? That's the ultimate goal. If you build a business, is you want to build a brand. And you can destroy that brand really, really quick if you're an idiot. And when you destroy your brand, it's tough to come back from that. And a lot of that is, what kind of integrity do you have? Are you honest with people? Do you do what you say you're going to do? Are you ethical? Do you treat your employees the right way? And I think at the end of the day, even though maybe you are successful and you do have money, you're no better than anybody else. We all wake up in the morning. We all do the same thing. Nobody's better than anybody else. And I think if you treat people that way, people will like to do business with you because they know that they're dealing with someone who's honest and has integrity. And that's been huge for us. I know, when we sold our last company, the other thing that's interesting is when you sell a company, like all these people come out of the woodworks and say, well, you promised me this and you promised me that. And early on when you're building a business, like you don't remember some of this stuff, right? Because it's just mass chaos. We sold our last business and we had a few people come forward and they're like, well, I feel like you guys owe me. And so we wrote them checks just so that we could sleep at night and they'd never be able to say, you screwed me, you did me wrong. There's comfort in sleeping at night, just knowing that you treat people the right way, which is hugely important to us. And I think it's been a huge part of why we've been able to be at least somewhat successful in what we've been able to do, which is super exciting. Well, those are my 3 lessons. I'd love to, if anybody has any questions or like thoughts on being an entrepreneur or wants to know anything, happy to share.
What is your impression from being an entrepreneur full time and then now being a CEO full time?
Yeah. Our first company, my partner was the CEO. And I think a few things that I've learned that I didn't understand then is how much more stressful it is being a CEO. The decisions you make at this point, we have about 100 employees in this business. Every decision I make impacts 100 people. I think number 2 is what you really learn about yourself. Being number 2 to him, he bore a lot of the brunt. And so, sometimes I would look at him and I'm like, hey, it's your decision. Like, you're the guy. You make the decision. Now I have to make those decisions. And so it's taught me a lot about myself, what my strengths, what my weaknesses are. I think how to make better decisions for me. So for example, I think one of the things we all struggle with is we compare ourselves to other people, don't we? We're always like kind of, man, I wish I was more like this and like that. So my partner is like a very stereotypical entrepreneur. He's high energy and he thinks super fast, right? He'll come down and sit down and like just rapid fire with me. And at the first, like that was a struggle for me because I'm a slow thinker. I'm very methodical. And I would try to keep up with him. And what I learned is we made some stupid decisions early on. They weren't catastrophic, but they were stupid. And as I thought more about them, I'm like, okay, we should have done this and that. So now what we do is like, he'll come in and rapid fire with me. And I'll say, hey, Bo, I need 3 days to like process what you just dumped on me. Let's meet up in 3 days and let me think through it. So it's helped me really kind of come into my own and realize how I make decisions. And I think too, I've gained a lot of confidence in myself and kind of a surety of this is how I want to build a business. He sees things differently than I do. Something that's huge to me is culture. So how do you build a culture? How do you build a place where people want to come work for you? And it becomes this place that like, man, I would love to work there. So our core market is dentists, out of all things. And within the dental community, I'm super proud to say that like people want to come work for us. And they've seen what we built and they want to be a part of it. And I think that's the coolest thing. That was a long answer to your question.
Kind of a follow-up question with something you just said, but like you were talking about removing the emotion from the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make that switch to like have a good community in your company, but also remove the emotion from those business decisions? Like, is that a switch that you can do pretty well, or like how have you found ways to do that?
Yeah, great question. So think in your life, I'll ask you a question back. Who are the people in your life that you're most vulnerable with? Like you're the most open with and share things with?
Probably my closest buddies,
Okay. Why is that?
because I've spent time with them. We've done a lot of trips, a lot of adventures that like are kind of like that, but life-threatening level where we've become really close throughout experiences. So,
Okay. Let's sum this up to one word, which is you trust them,
yeah.
right? Trust them with your life. You trust them with maybe like personal things that you share with them, right? And so you're willing to share those things because you trust them.
Yeah.
It's not that you don't have emotion in your company, but the foundational piece that makes really good teams is trust.
Okay.
And the reason that's so important is in a lot of companies, things get political, right? What does that mean if things are political? What are you afraid to do if it's a political environment? How do you act? Are you scared to share stuff? Like if you don't trust somebody, would you share something personal with them? Why not?
Because there's not, I don't know if they're gonna go off telling people stuff.
You don't know what they're going to do with it, right? And this is the same thing at companies, which is like, well, I don't want to be the person that like points out something bad's happening because I don't want it to reflect negatively on me, right? That's a political situation. But teams that trust each other are willing to say, here's a problem and we're going to solve it. And it's not a reflection on you or me. It's the problem, right? And so as a leader, it's your job to kind of foster this community and say, how do we build the absolute best team? Foundational, bar none, is we have to trust each other. And when you have that trust, things just don't become emotional because you see things for what they are and you don't worry about kind of CYA, right? That's like the worst thing that happens in organizations and when people get CYA because they're like, well, is this going to reflect bad on me? It's who cares? Like we have a problem. Let's come together. Let's solve that problem.
You guys know what CYA is?
Does anybody know what CYA is? Cover your ass. So protect yourself. Like, I don't want to do anything that maybe jeopardizes my position in the company. It's all about like, it's self-serving, right? Versus being a team player. It's like when you're on a sports team and you have one of like your teammates who just doesn't want to be like part of the team, really. They either elevate themselves or they're lazy, whatever it is. Like those are the worst ones, right? Because you're like, listen, we're a team, we win together, we lose as a team. But some people just feel like they're better than the team.
So you said like you found a company and you bought it. Like that's always one thing that kind of like confused me is like where do people just randomly buy companies? Like how did you find it? Like what was kind of your process of like deciding to buy the first company?
So the founder of Mango was my neighbor, and I just happened to be talking to him one night, and I mean I knew he was trying to build this company, and so I just ran into him one night and I said, "Hey, how's Mango going? What's new? What's happening?" And he really opened up to me about partnership problems, just they'd stalled out. They weren't going anywhere. He was really frustrated. And so that just opened up a conversation, and I was just peppering him with questions like, what about this? What about that? And we talked through it. We ended up talking, obviously a lot more. And as I started to kind of wrap my head around the business, I approached him and I just said, hey, what if we buy your partner out? And here's what I think the strategy could be. Tell me if I'm wrong. And we just started kind of walking through that scenario. I will say probably one of the hardest things to do in life is to get a deal done. It took us 18 months to sell our first company. And when you're dealing with like a Fortune 100, right? So this is one of the top 100 biggest businesses in the country. I mean, they had more lawyers than we had employees. And you would get a call one morning and they're like, hey, some lawyer in some cubicle in some faraway corner has a question about this. And you're like, I don't even know what that means. So you call your lawyer. You're like, hey, we just got this question. Do we know anybody that has expertise in this? And you're like scrambling, trying to find a lawyer somewhere that can get on the phone with you. And this was the process for 18 months. And it just beats the crap out of you. And it's really expensive, right? You're just sitting there, you're paying lawyers $500-$800 an hour. And you're sitting there saying, like, are we going to get this deal done? And so as I talked to the founder of Mango, like, you have to go through this process. And this is where not being emotional becomes really, really important, because there's two things that don't mix well. And that's emotion and money. Those are like the worst things. And people get highly emotional when money's on the line. And so his partner was a pretty emotional guy too. So we had to you just got to kind of work through that. And it's a process. And you can't be too anxious. You can't be too aggressive. You just got to kind of navigate through that. The reality is there's so many businesses that can be bought. So in the last couple of years, we've bought, I think, 5 businesses. And this is where it goes back. Like, if you have capital, then people start knowing that too. And so now deals kind of come to us, if that makes sense. But a lot of it is just talking to people, asking questions, like networking, which I'm not particularly great at. I'm pretty introverted at heart. I want to go to work and go home and not talk to anybody. But that's how Mango came along. And then we bought another business because a guy I met, we got to know him. I would say most of the businesses we bought are just people we've gotten to know. And their business interested in us that we wanted to talk to them. So. Any other questions? Who here wants to be an entrepreneur? Who wants to start a business? What are some of your ideas? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur?
It's a means to an end for me. I have a lot of big things that I want to do. But for me to accomplish those, I need money.
And you see entrepreneurship as a way to get money?
I see it as a way to grow to a point where I'm making money. Yeah.
That's cool. Who else throw their head? I see some hands back there.
The idea of being my own boss and working more and making more money and being able to not find certain hours that someone wants to give me, or being able to put myself in situations to be successful.
That's cool. Yeah. Your new hours become like when you wake up to when you go to bed. And that depends. Sometimes you wake up at 6 and go to bed at 3 a.m. So you're right. You have your own hours, but it's just different, right? Feel like you're your own boss. Don't answer to anybody. Yeah. Who else? I saw there was some hands over here.
Yeah, I just really want to make a big impact. I get kind of bored with the traditional way of doing things, so I think it'd be cool to just do that.
That's cool. Yeah, you guys are way more forward thinking than I was at your age, which is I want to make an impact, means to an end. I was just thinking like, I just got to pass this class so my parents don't kill me. Was kind of my thought process. What do you think the best, how do you, what do you think are, I'll throw some questions out to you guys. What do you think are some really good tools to have if you want to start a business? What do you think really good tools are? And I'm thinking from like a knowledge perspective. What do you think some important things are?
Money.
Got to have capital. That's pretty important, right? It's pretty tough to build something without capital. So either having a capital partner, right? How do you get access to capital? Which ultimately is like, how good can you sell? Because you got to sell somebody to write you a check, right? So being able to sell, and the reality is if you start a business, you should be your number one salesperson. Like you got to be able to sell. So I'd say sales is a good one. What else?
Let's say kind of back to what you were saying about networking. Like you got to know a guy. Like you got to know people that'll help you get stuff done. Like you can't do everything by yourself.
Yeah. I would say find mentors. Find somebody that's actually done something, right? Be super careful here because a lot of people will go around saying what they've done, but they really haven't done anything, right? So be really careful that you don't hitch your wagon to, essentially a wannabe who's just really good at selling themselves, because those people will take advantage of you. So mentorship is huge. I personally have a couple mentors that I call regularly and just say, hey, like, here's a problem I have. Here's my thought process. This is what I'm thinking of doing. And what do you think about that? What's really cool is you will find that people that are highly successful love to mentor and help people. These are like I'm just telling you, these are the best people to try to find. And an example of this is actually one for me that, like in the last 6 months that I met. So I got introduced to, I would say probably he's got to be like top 5 most successful entrepreneurs in all of Utah. Like this guy's the real deal. And I got introduced to him and went to dinner with him a few times and just really got to know each other. He was a super cool guy. And I was having a problem, so I thought, I'm going to give it a shot. So I called him and just started talking to him. And he just was just like opened up and was like, I actually dealt with that same thing. Here's what I'll do. I talk to him almost every day now. And I keep asking him, I'm like, what can I do for you? Right? Do you want some equity in our company? Like, how can I help you? And every time he's like, you don't get it, man. I don't want anything from you. I just want you to be successful. I want you to crush it. You guys you're onto something. And if I can help you like reach your pinnacle of what you can be, that's all I want. And I was like, that's super cool. Right. And it's funny because like he lives in a totally different like stratosphere than me. I called him, a few weeks ago. He's like, oh, I just got off the phone with Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce. And he's like, Mark and I were talking about this and here's where his head's at. So like he's sharing with me what some of the biggest CEOs in the country are thinking about, which has been so valuable for me. So find really good mentors like that who can open doors for you as well. People that are connected and it's successful, they know everybody and they can open doors for you that you can't open. It's hard to get with them, but if you can, that probably sets you up for success a lot more. So find really good mentors. Anybody have any other ideas? So I'll give you one that I think is super, super important that most entrepreneurs don't think about is, in my opinion, is study accounting. And most business people, when they hear that, they just want to cry, right? Does anybody here take accounting classes? How do you like them? Okay. Most business people hate accounting, right? And most accountants hate. It's like this like friction between the finance and the accounting people, right? Accounting people are like, well, we deal with actual numbers, and finance people are like, well, you live in the past. We live in the future. We're the smart ones. Like, just give us the financial statements and we'll make the magic happen. In fact, I met my business partner in an entrepreneur class at BYU, Idaho. And I think Jason came and spoke, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys remember Jason Earl? Were you here for Jason Earl? So
He was like the first one in the semester. He talked about concrete.
So that's where I met my business partner in his class when he was a professor at BYU, Idaho. And he taught an entrepreneurial class. And so I was in that class, right? Remind you, I'm an accounting major. I'm in with all these entrepreneur and finance people. They're talking about like pre-money and post-money. I don't know if you guys have gone over like pre-money and post-money. It's how you value a company. And so Jason would go up to the board and he'd write, well, pre-money it was 14 million. And I would always raise my hand. And I was like, how'd you get to 14 million? He's like, well, that's what we valued the company at. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. So can you like break that number down for me? And then he's like, we're going to put, $1 million of capital in. So post money. So if you're pre-money 14, you put $1 million in, post money, you're 15 million, right? Your company's now worth 15 million. And I'd be like, why are you putting $1 million in? How'd you get to that number? And I swear every time I raised my hand, Jason would just be like, oh my gosh, like, okay, Kevin, let's do this. And we'd get into it. The TA for him at that time was Bo, my now business partner. And so we met in that class, and I hated that class. I hated it so much. And I was in there, and I remember I went home and I told my wife, I'm like, listen, I'm in this entrepreneurial class, which I don't even know what that means. And I'm in there with a bunch of finance students, and I just absolutely hate this class. It's the worst class. And she said, Kevin, just give it another week or two. If you hate it after that, just drop it. And the next week is when I met Bo. And so it was a bit fortuitous. But having a deep understanding of accounting is probably one of the best assets that I have. And being a CEO, understanding financial statements and what makes up a financial statement is everything to a business. Because the way you make good business decisions is how does it impact me financially? How does this impact the P&L? How does this impact the balance sheet? And the most important, if I said, what's the most important of the financial statements, the P&L, the balance sheet, or the cash flow statement? What do you think the right answer is? What should you care most about in a P&L, a balance sheet, or a cash flow statement? What's the lifeblood of a business? It's cash flow, right? You know what's interesting is most people say your P&L because they think that tells you if you're profitable, but it doesn't, right? These are like the things that you have to understand. A P&L is a scoreboard. It just says, are you winning or are you losing? But it doesn't tell you anything about cash. And so I think a lot of like young entrepreneurs or even like seasoned business people, they suck at accounting. And so they don't make good decisions and it impacts them financially and they don't know why that is. And so everything I do, honestly, I have a big forecast that I built. And if I want to hire somebody or we want to build a new feature or initiative, I just put it in and I see what it does to my cash flow. That's the only thing I do. So I think having a really good understanding of financial statements is really critical to be a good entrepreneur. It's super helpful. So take some accounting classes. They may be boring, but they're pretty awesome and they'll help you a lot.
So, I got a question.
Okay.
Besides just saying don't compromise your integrity, you talked about people do weird stuff with money. What do you actually do to remain the kind of person that you want to be with integrity, trustworthy, ethical? How do you not let yourself be changed by success and money? Because it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it.
Pretty deep question. I think a couple things for me personally. I would say the first thing for me, and probably the most important decision I ever made in my life, is who I married. And my wife, so I believe God made Courtney just for me. Like, she is perfect for me because I'm not the easiest person to live with. A lot of times I'm gone, and she has always been supportive, and she understands like what it means to be an entrepreneur, to grow something. It's different if you have a business, and I'm not knocking this, don't get me wrong. If you have a business that does $500,000, $1 million, $2 million a year, that's a lot different business that's doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 million. And when you start getting into those high numbers, your family life is very, very difficult, like, because you don't have any balance. And so for me, marrying her has been incredible because she's the least prideful person I've ever met. She's not competitive, and she grew up really, really poor. So she buys all her clothes at TJ Maxx and Target. Like, she just doesn't care about nice things. I'm the high maintenance one in our relationship. In fact, every year for Christmas, I'm like, why don't you just buy me Jordans for Christmas? She's like, Kevin, I am not spending $150 on a pair of shoes. That is the stupidest thing you could ever do. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just buy them and say I'm there from you. So that's helped me stay very grounded. She doesn't care about a big house. She drives a minivan. She loves it. She's super happy. 2 is, you have to make a commitment to yourself that money will not change you. And you just have to constantly remind yourself that money shouldn't define who I am. Just don't allow it to make you prideful. A lot of people, I think, they equate money to self-worth, and you just can't do that. And I think if you stay true to who you are and don't get caught up in it, you'll be just fine. But we read about people all the time that give up their integrity and everything just to make money. And to be honest, a lot of times those people will end up in trouble. They either end up broke or they end up on the news. So don't be either one of those. Don't be broke and don't be on the news, okay?
I don't know if it's personal, but how do you manage your own investments? Like, not for the company, but only for your personal life? Because we know now that you might be very wealthy and know how to manage those things. I would like to know how that looks like.
Yeah, so originally when we sold our first company, we had a professional money manager, and we thought we gave a vast chunk of it to him and had him invest it. I would say the big lesson both Bo and I have learned is that we can make more with our money than some money manager. And so we just took all our capital back, and we just manage our own capital. So I don't have any money in the market because I feel like I can get a better return putting money into our businesses at this point, and like doing hard money loans, things like that. And everybody's so different here. So like real estate seems super boring to me. It's like You buy a house, you rent it out. Like, to me personally, that's pretty boring. It's like, I'll get a rent check every month, but you can't really scale that. I mean, you can, but like, I don't want to have 50 renters that I got to deal with. And so at this point, we really try to put it in. To be honest, we want to put our money into software, because software scales so much better, right? Each increment or person that you put on software doesn't cost you anything, and the way that they value software companies is pretty cool, right? They just say, what's your revenue, and they give you a multiple of that, which still blows my mind. It's wild. So for us, it's like, we want to put our money in tech that we can scale. But everybody's so different here. And I think some people have a scarcity mentality. We tend to be more abundant. So it's like, and if we make a mistake, who cares? Like, life goes on. So
I think that's all the time we have, Kevin. So thank you.
Thank you.